on to the election integrity scam and stuff that we'll be talking about tonight. I have to start off by saying most of this material is taken from the justthenews.com. By the way, that election, the video that you just saw will be up on the YouTube channel tonight or tomorrow for you to use. If you want to share with your friends, please make sure again that you share the message out. It's time for us to start pushing back, and there's nothing better to push back with than the hypocrisy of these people on the left. When we have these Democrats do the hypocritical act of what they're of demanding money and then turning it around and using it for their own personal gain, this is corruption in its highest. It's no different. It doesn't matter which party you in, but in this case, it's definitely clear that the left is dirty. Having said that, brother, let's talk about election integrity. So, did you know that there's 3 court cases that have been decided that prove that there has actually been problems with election integrity in the last election? And one of those, the biggest one, I think, is the Wisconsin
Wait a minute. I thought Trump lost all the cases.
Exactly. Except for he didn't. And in this case right here, we have the 2020 election, the state Supreme Court of Wisconsin coming out very firmly and very clearly that the government of Wisconsin was wrong. The governor and the secretary of state were wrong to allow people and to give the instruction that you could claim you were disabled or homebound because of COVID, and that you did not then have to file with ID. So again, this is all about chain of custody. This is all about who has whether you're a real person or a dead person or a made up person. There's a real chain of custody on that ballot. And in this case, over almost 250,000 ballots were believed to have been affected by this rule change. And John, 20,000 votes was the difference between the two of them in Wisconsin. Just saying, clearly that's an issue. That's just one, by the way. Then there is Michigan, and we have a whole bunch of Michigan on this one, John, tonight. So I just want the state Supreme Court has ruled they violated the law by giving unlawful instructions. Again, unlawful instructions from Witless Whitmore and the state secretary of state, who, by the way, is trying to go after but I want to make it clear that we are not talking about any voting machine in this case. We're not talking about any type of this court case has nothing to do with voting machines. This is accurate information about procedure and structure of the election in the 2020 election. So this is not about any type of issue regarding the machines. That's a separate issue. So the Witless Whitmore's Secretary of State had every signature was to be accurate regardless. So if Mickey Mouse signed that ballot for James Baldini, if I lived in Michigan, then that is an accurate and acceptable ballot, John. None of them were fraudulent. It didn't matter. Every ballot counted. And regardless of it, it's accuracy. That's the second case. The third case, I'm sorry, this is interrupted. I interrupted myself with this one with Georgia. By the way, John, did you know that there's 350,000 ballots in Georgia that have no chain of custody? 350,000, John.
I wonder how many of them are Xerox copies.
All that stuff that we saw with all the videos and stuff.
Can we see?
Yes.
Can we see them? No.
Yeah. You can see them in the video of them waiting for everybody to leave and starting putting them in the machine. Right. But the box was heavy.
Just like in Michigan, they had 90. What is it? At 8:00. That's when the election is supposed to stop, and then at 3 a.m. they had a van show up with, I think, 90 boxes or something like that. 9 boxes, 90 boxes.
Yes,
right. Thousands and thousands of ballots.
Yes. So
there's videos, guys. There's video.
In John, in Virginia, there's a consent decree that says, "Yeah, we screwed up. We accepted even ballots without postmarks, mail-in ballots without postmarks." John, mail-in ballots without postmarks. Everything is postmarked. Unbelievable.
except for when you just
Unbelievable.
run them off on a video, on
Except
a
for
Xerox
when you run them
machine.
through the Xerox machine.
Right.
Ooh, it was probably one of those old ones that we had when we were kids.
James,
right?
Trump lost Georgia. Okay, you just have to get over with it. He lost it by 14,000 votes, even though he won Florida by 400,000, which is right across the border. He lost it by 14,000. Nothing to see here.
Yes, no, nothing to see here. So then we dive into the city of Detroit. Now, this is all new information. Just came out last week. Now, but we've known about the Zuckerberg operatives, and we've known about this. You and I have reported on this months ago. At this point, this is actually the evidence. So now, the Amistad Project and Just the News have been doing a lot of Oprah requests and getting a lot of information from these different areas. And this is the hard slugging fight that has to be done in order to prove, and not only to prove that there's election integrity issues, but also to figure out how to fix it from happening in the future. Of course, it'd be nice if we could depend on members of the other party to do the right thing, but that's clearly never going to happen. So let's talk about how $13 million is what a regular election budget for the city of Detroit. Somehow, the $7.5 million more was dumped into their coffers to help pay for the judges, the ballot observers, the people who were making the adjudicators. All these people, the inspectors, they were all being paid off with
money.
Extra funds.
That's what Democrat does. Street money, right, brother?
Yep.
Money.
And John, it was all being done just to drive. This is all being done to drive the vote in these heavy Democratic areas. This is what we've seen now in Wisconsin. We've seen it in Pennsylvania. We now see it in Detroit. We've seen it in Green Bay is completely egregious. What we're going to talk about with Green Bay, but this is even just as bad in a sense. And I want you to give it numbers. These are the numbers that you can understand that there is certainly a problem with Detroit when they've had a population decline since 2016, John. Yet they've had a 15% increase in the number of votes. That's 80,000 more voters in this 2020 election. During the pandemic, no less, they were able to get this to happen. Why, John? Why? Well, I mean, we could say that there's a lot of dead people who voted, but
James, Detroit, we used to be a city of 2 million people because it was the center of the car industry. It's down to a couple 100,000. It's unbelievable. This is the only thing that goes up in voting rolls. Is the only thing that goes up in Detroit.
The votes are the only place that goes up in Detroit because the buildings are going down.
Everything is ridiculous.
It's John. The population shrunk there, and they were able to get more people to vote. Why? And I think a lot of this has to do with the Zuckerberg money that was dumped into it, the $7.5 million that was dumped into it in order to strategically, and this is the key terms, John. I want to put this in contrast for you. I want you to think of it like this: when you run a campaign, when you're trying to drive your own personal people to the vote, to get your vote out, to get your people behind you. When you're running, Canada is running their campaign. They do things like geofencing, and they use the modern technology to figure out what you're more likely to vote for, what kind of issues you're interested in, and things that are going to drive you to the polls, right? This is exactly what they were doing in Michigan and in different parts of the country. They were using data, and we'll find out later that especially Liz Whitmore was giving, or within contractual fashion, data on the COVID tracing to Democrat operatives, John. So when you do all this COVID tracing to see who you've talked to, where you've been, what you've been come in contact with, all that data has been handed to the Democrat operatives so that they can use it in order to increase the vote. And we see this throughout the country, but we have proof coming out of Detroit and coming out of Michigan, and we can see this here. The operatives are being paid off and bought by the Zuckerberg money. The contracts are out there. I just want to go on to the next page. The thing that should be upsetting to all of us is the military ballots that are out of Michigan. The Secretary of State according to Phil Klein from the Amistad Project. He pointed out that they were sent out with the wrong kind of paper. So these magic machines that take pictures of the image of the ballot and decide who voted for who, John, those machines that run the ballots through, they need a certain weight of paper. They need a certain kind of paper in order to run through it. Otherwise, it gets crinkled up, destroyed, and it doesn't go through the machine. It turns out that all the military ballots sent out from Michigan were sent on the wrong paper. And so what is the remedy for this, John? What's the remedy? Well, the remedy is you take every single ballot from the military, you bring it down to the TCF Center, which is the customer treating customers fairly center in Detroit. It really is a place, John. That's what they call it. It's right there on Detroit River. I got a picture of it and everything. They have 130 some tables there, and what they do is they give the ballots out to these people working here that the Zuckerberg money is paid for, and they have them copying it over. Oh, you voted for Trump. Okay, Biden gets the number here. Okay, you voted for Trump. Up, Biden gets the number here too. And that's what they did, because John, here's the thing: every single one of those votes, you know where the Republicans were during that, because the Democrats were all over the place. The Democrat operatives who were observing it were all over the place. Where were the Republicans? Back up in the bleachers, way up in the top of the TCF Center, hidden some from view. Not even the nosebleed seats, John. Not even the nosebleed seats. You couldn't see anything. There's no oversight. There's no protection. There's no checking. The Treating Customers Fairly Center in downtown Detroit was used as ground zero for the destruction of election integrity. That's the way to look at it. And John, these are the military ballots. These are the people who are putting their lives on the line, who are overseas right now, who are absentee ballots, because what choice do they have? They're overseas. They can't fly home to vote. And so they trusted the integrity of the election, their vote, on the government of Michigan, and it failed them. In fact, it completely ruined it for them. And that's just, we're moving on now. The next thing in Wisconsin, Green Bay, John, who's in charge of an election? It's supposed to be the election clerk. Everywhere you go in the entire country, there's somebody who's the election clerk that's in charge of the vote. They're the ones who keep track of everything. They monitor the numbers. They're the ones who sign at the bottom of the dotted line. They're the ones who are in charge of it. Guess what happens in Wisconsin, John? The Wisconsin clerk from Green Bay is pushed aside, sent on leave, and when she actually gets done, she sends this email, and I have the quote. I love the quote. I don't understand how people who don't have knowledge of the process can tell us how to manage the election. Because, John, she was replaced by a Democratic operative who was paid off by Zuckerberg. And so he had the keys to the election, and that's in Green Bay. John, I remember the ballots coming in from Green Bay, and that's when things started to go really south really quick. So, and to give you a comparison of the money that was spent in the two different areas in Trump country, per voter, it's about $4 per voter that was spent on a Trump candidate or Trump voter in the Trump areas, and in the blue areas, it was $47 per vote. And, John, one of the questions I'm going to ask you later, I'm giving you a heads up, by the way. Here's a heads up.
You're supposed to do that the day before, not
well, it's not really. You don't really need a heads up for this, because I think I can answer it for you. The point of this is the Zuckerberg money that they did through a nonprofit, is that legal to give to these election centers, these clerks, in order to enhance the vote in that area, as opposed to around the entire state? You think about it as we go to the next slide. So this organized effort by the Zuckerberg wasn't just Zuckerberg. It was something from a bunch of different places. Its intention was to drive the vote, to have people come out in the blue areas. And one of the things about the Democrats in Michigan, if you remember, John, Liz Whitmore was closing down election sites in the Republican areas. Why? Because she was using COVID as a scapegoat in order to, we can't have this. We got to get rid of these places. We can't have voting. And we know that Republicans are the ones who vote most of the time in person. And this is just more orchestrated maneuvering from the Democrats to disrupt and take away our election integrity. And moving on, the solution, John. The solution. There's a bunch of things that we need to do. First of all, get rid of the dark money of these Zuckerberg people. No more private money into the organization. Get a chain of custody for every vote. ID. We have a bunch of possible solutions. Improve the structure. I think Phil Klein had one of the best suggestions. Every single legislature out there should have a standing committee ready to call in the entire legislature at a moment's notice for during the election period, the period before an election, during the election, and directly after the election. Because right now, all it is a Secretary of State signing off on the election, saying, "Yeah,
it's the judges."
It's and the judge. Oh no. Instead of there being a check to make sure everything's okay, to call a stay on it, every single legislature should have a check on whether that certification goes to the federal government. It shouldn't just be signed off.
Well, they've been sending it to judges, regular judges. Judges should have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that too. They should have nothing to do with it. So here's my question, John: is this illegal now? Before we put in a law that says no private money from any type of charity organization to be given to a government organization for elections, is this legal now?
Is it legal? No, it's a lie. It's a fraud. They wanted to support Democrats, and they did it by lying, by saying that they were supporting everybody, and they only supported their favorite candidates in the Democrats. That's enough for wire fraud and mail fraud.
Oh, there you go. And so my next question, because I want to give you a chance.
If there was a real federal government acting to prevent election tampering, which is what this is, they'd be suing. The feds love that wire fraud. They love that mail fraud.
Well,
they'd be all over this, and these people be facing the rest of their lives in jail, like our poor Capitol guys are. 400 of them.
So John, let's step back for a second. If the federal government isn't going to do it, who should be doing that? What you're saying about taking things to court?
Sometimes the states, states have their versions of the law too. The reason why the wiretapping, the reason why the federal wire fraud and mail is they love, because for the federal stuff you need two underlying and two letters or two emails, and you got it for the federal.
But John, there's no Republicans leadership out there. There's none of these Republican organizations which are doing this, which should be doing this. They should be taking these states to court. They should be fighting this. And John, where are they? They're not doing it. And why? Why aren't they doing it? And I tell you the reason. And it goes back to my opening about Delco Force Pack, Republican Force Pack, and the other grassroots organizations. It's because the leadership in the states are cowardly hiding and not willing to rock the boat because they're afraid they're going to get a bad name and it's going to ruin the Republican brand if they start declaring election integrity. Well, and so that's why grassroots organizations are saying, screw you, we're not taking this anymore. We're not sitting down. We don't want your establishment characters anymore. And I'm not targeting any particular candidate right now. I'm just pointing out that these are why these grassroots organizations are standing up. They're tired of it. They're tired of seeing this other stuff go on, brother. And I think that's it. Yep, there it is. The singular largest election intrusion in history.
You mean erection intrusion?
Erection, yes. I should have put that.
If you're going to get banned, might as well go whole hog.
Yeah, you might as well go all the way, right?